Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I want to welcome back all of you at the Global AI Community on Tour virtual event. I'm very happy to have you all here. We are back with our next speaker, Seth. Hi, Seth. So where are you broadcasting from?
That's a good question. I am coming to you from the mothership close to Redmond. I live about 10 miles away from Redmond, about 16 kilometers for those of you that are international, because I know the difference. And so just a little town outside of Redmond where they've all told us to work from home. So excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see you here. Thank you for joining us. And what is the time right now over there?
Right now, it is, I think, 3 o'clock p.m. I know it's like midnight for you, right?
Yes, it is. It is midnight here, and it's pretty exciting to see your talk now. Seth currently works at Microsoft and is interested in artificial intelligence, specifically in the realm of machine learning. So you might find yourself working with not tabular data, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
working with images, forms, and whatnot, which is often might feel a bit like struggle until you get something useful out of it. So Seth now is going to show us how to make sense of unstructured data in a short amount of time and with amazing success.
All right.
So Seth, take it away from here, please.
All right, my friend. So I'm going to tell you a sad story, and then you're going to watch this and be like, what the heck is he talking about? This doesn't make sense. And then we'll wrap it all up at the end to show you how you can make sense of unstructured data using AI. So we're going to start with a story because I'm sure everyone that's watching is like this guy. Oh, make sure I click on the right thing. Is like this guy. There you go. Who's a very hardworking developer or technical person. You do a really good job and you try to make sure that you might work at a small company, maybe a medium to large company as well. And you are just an amazing developer that does such good work that you're thinking, it's Friday. Maybe I'll leave a little bit early, because that's what Fridays are for. Never deploy on a Friday. I have some very bad stories about that. And imagine that one day on a Friday afternoon, it's like 3 o'clock p.m. Your boss comes and's like, hey, Bill, Alice, because those are the names we use when we're trying to talk about programmers, because our names are all Bob and Alice, right? According to all encryption books that I've ever read. So they come to you, they say, Bob, Alice. So I was in the database yesterday, the boss, and this is the boss, the guy that doesn't know anything, right? And he's just in charge. He comes to you and he says, hey, so I was in the database yesterday, and you're like, what? Because you see that smile there? That's a smile of like, I'm scared about what happened. So boss was in the database, and he's like, I was learning a new thing. I think it's called Squeal. And there was some good statements. I learned to select. I learned how to do where there, and you're like, okay, where is this going? Um, Select where, and then there was this one statement that I tried to test out called delete. And now we're all looking at each other like, say what? And it turns out, dear programmer Alice or Bob, that I somehow deleted the database, all of it. But that's okay, he says, or she says, the boss. One good thing that I recognize is I know you as a programmer can put it back. And here is the good news, says the boss. The good news is that we can actually recreate the entire database. And I know you can because you're a crack programmer, because we've actually saved all of the sales data that I deleted in the database in these wonderful PDFs. And so I brought them on a hard drive for you. And there's got to be a way to recreate it because all the information's there. It's got to be really easy to put it back into the database. But I've done something for you because I spent my whole night doing this because I knew this would be helpful. I've actually separated them into folders, and these folders have the years in them. And because I'm such an amazing boss, I also put the invoice number in the file. Don't worry, you can do this. And the first question you have as a programmer is, I don't know, there's got to be like 5 or 6 of you out there watching this that have looked at a PDF file inside a notepad. There's always like 1 or 2 crazy people that do that. It's going to be hard to do that. And so the next question you ask them, the boss, is how many are there? Which is a good question. And so as you realize how many there are, I think it says 140,911 files in 11 folders, 9.7 gigabytes of PDFs. You realize that you are going to have a very long weekend because it's 3 p.m. and the boss says that our sales reports are due Monday afternoon. And he says, don't worry, because as anyone knows, you can just use AI, right? Just use AI. And like if I had a nickel for every time someone said, just use AI. By the way, did you notice the source of his intelligence? Dr. Internet, famous Swedish scientist that knows everything, told him that he can use the internet. So as you freshen up your resume and recognize that your weekend plans are gone, you think to yourself, my weekend is gone. So this is the story. How do we convert all of those PDF files from that into somehow making the database come back? That's what we're going to do during this session. I've already used up 6 minutes, so I've only got 40 to go. So what's going to happen is this. I'm going to start talking about something that seems like is a non sequitur and has nothing to do with anything. Bear with me, because we're going to put every piece in place until the tower of us restoring the entire database will be there at the end. And then obviously I'll take any questions you have. And the source code's all available, so you'll be able to have this. If you want the slides, they're somewhere as well. So talking about something maybe that you have heard about, but might seem like it has nothing to do with this person looking. By the way, the reason why I'm using these pictures, if I may take an aside, is Microsoft has a collection of stock images that somebody must have paid a lot of money for that no one uses. And so as you've noticed, I'm trying to get our money's worth and using as many as I can. So these sad programmers were indeed part of our Microsoft stock image collection, which is awesome, I think, right? I mean, if you want, maybe if you can give us the rights, you can take a picture of yourself when you're having a boss moment like this, and we can add it to our collection of sad programmer stock images. Okay, Azure Cognitive Search. Again, this is where it seems like I'm getting a non sequitur. Azure Cognitive Search is like creating your own Bing service. You know when you Google with Bing sometimes and you get all this awesome search stuff back? Imagine being able to use that as a service. Management-free keyword search. And here's an embarrassing thing I'd like to admit to all of you watching. The third one there, faceting. I think I went into a meeting with the people that make this, and I said it was faceting, and they laughed at me. And then I've never said it again. But faceting is a way to segregate responses by facets, which is pretty cool. Language analyzers, geospatial support, all sorts of things. So imagine as a company, like this poor developer now that needs to figure out this PDF thing, you have a lot of files in this amazing folder somewhere in your business called the share. So you might have documents that are PDFs, you might have Word docs, you might have pictures of Scott Guthrie with blue shirts, etc. Right? Everyone has these virtual junk folders on the share, but it would be nice to be able to extract data out of it. So we're going to look at this amazing pattern with Azure Cognitive Search that enables us to do that. And I'm going to repeat it 3 times, but we're gonna go like high level and then medium level and then super down in the deep level. Now I will tell you that the demos I recorded, because they actually take a fair bit of time, as you noticed, that was 14 gigs. And if I upload those things during this live stream, my face will be even more pixelated. You might think you're watching a Minecraft cartoon, which may be a good thing for you, but not for me. So let's go through this pattern right here. Three-step pattern for doing intelligent search using Azure Cognitive Search. The first is you have to ingest your data. You pull it in. And that's what Azure Cognitive Search, and there's something called an indexer that just pulls stuff in. The second thing that happens is you can enrich your data with stuff. For example, a simple thing might be you might want to add an extension to something, or you might want to add additional rich information to those files as they're getting pulled in. And then the last thing you do is you explore. All right, or explorate, as I said in the same meeting where I said face-ting. I was really on a roll. So let's go through this a little bit more in depth. So let's zoom in. So when you ingest data, you actually get the data from a source. We'll talk about each one of these again, and I told you we'd do it 3 times. But the source data, when you get these source data, there's this thing that happens called document cracking. And it's kind of a weird thing, but you'll see once you see what it's doing, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Document cracking. The next thing that happens is you enrich this data. Again, once it's cracked open, you can enrich it with skill sets. You can add intelligent skill sets like AI services and cognitive services, or you can literally do whatever you want, and that's what we're going to do in this case. Once you have these enriched documents are then pushed into what's called a search index. And that search index is like a database. Again, I'm saying that the word database because this is the part of the story where you're like, is he giving us a clue? Yes, I am. I am giving you a clue. The search index is like a database where all of this information comes in. Let's zoom in one more time. What does it mean to ingest? Well, the built-in connectors for Azure Cognitive Search are pretty cool. You can use blob storage, Azure SQL, Cosmos DB, Azure Tables, MySQL, Azure Files, ADLS Gen 2. These are the formats that we support: PDF, RTF, JSON, blah, 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 blah. So now comes the interesting bit of document cracking. So whenever a document comes, like let's just say a Word doc comes in, the indexer is like, here, give me this Word doc. And then it grabs it. It cracks it open into 3 constituent parts. The 3 parts are the text, like what text is in there. The metadata, for example, if these are in blob storage, there's certain metadata attached to the file, like when was it put there. You can also on blob storage, you can tag stuff, interestingly enough. So that comes in there too. And then you have images. For example, a Word doc may have a bunch of images. A PowerPoint, such as this one, has text and images. So what it does is the indexer gets its magic hammer, hits the document, cracks it into these 3 parts, text, metadata, and images. And once it has that, it can take those 3 things and then enrich the data somehow. So here come the 3 things, in the ingest part. In the enrich part, you may have been learning during the last, I think this virtual community thing has been going on for like, 72 hours roughly, maybe 89,000 hours. But you may have heard in one of those 89,000 hours about something called cognitive services, which is AI that you call instead of AI that you build. And so with these cognitive services, you can enrich text. For example, you may have a CSV file that has a ton of comments, and you want to know, are they positive or negative? Well, you could use cognitive services to do that. Same with the images. You may want to know what's in the image so that if you search for something in a document that has an image, then you can totally do that. And then finally, the explore bit, whereas you can search this entire index yourself. So here's an example skill set. Okay, so a skill is one of these things. A skill set is a set of them that you run like a conveyor belt. So you crack it open, the 3 things come out: text, metadata, and images. And then there's like other hammer. I'm thinking like, I don't know if you ever seen like a machine shop with things that. So imagine each one of these skills like, right? And as it goes down the conveyor belt, for example, in this case, notice that in the image one, there's 3 skills that are combined to produce text. That text is merged, and then there's some intelligence that happens after that. And so it's like a conveyor belt for each of your documents, but one that you do not have to manage nor mess around with, which is awesome. I'll show you how to set it up. Obviously, that's how we mess around with it. And then all the magic happens after that. And now, again, another foreshadowing time. You can also add your own custom skills, not just the ones that are in there, but you can add your own custom skills to do anything, like literally anything, which is fantastic. Finally, explore. which is, again, ingest, enrich, explore. Explore is you can do all sorts of crazy searches, and I'll show you them. And the cool thing is this is a back-end service because I'm going to show you a demo with the actual portal, but the queries you send to it and the response that comes back is all JSON. And so in theory, you could use this as a back-end to your beautiful, wonderful site that you spent 30,000 hours figuring out the CSS for, which you all did. I know you did. Demo number 1 here is going to be out of the box, what does Azure Cognitive Search do? And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to do what we want, but that's okay because it may do what you want. Beginning. So we're going to build 3 things. We're going to build a skill set, an index, and an indexer. Okay, so I'm going to turn my face here to look at my computer because my computer's right here, and let's go through this quick little demo of doing this from scratch. Now, these are all artisanal bits. I did every single one of these things myself, and then I sped it up a little bit so you don't have to see it for a long time. All right, so this is Azure. Creating a resource is super easy. So we're going to create a resource group. I like resource groups because they let you put everything together in one spot. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to call it Cognitive Search. And we're going to put it in the Eastern United States. Very good. By the way, the reason I'm also recording this is because we're trying to save our compute stuff for people that really need it. And so I have this here. We're going to create a storage account. Why do we need a storage account, you ask? Well, because that's where our source data is going to be, where we put all of our PDFs. And I'm going to put it in the same region. That way we don't have a lot of latency when everything is going back and forth. All right, so that's submitting. There is our storage account, which is amazing. Again, all of this is available, including these slides. So you'll be able to see how to do this yourself as well. All right, so let's add a container here. The first container we're going to add is a test one because we want to test this stuff out. And what we're going to do is I have this cool thing called Azure Storage Explorer, which lets me treat this stuff as if it was Windows Explorer. I put it there. Notice that there is the test container. And what I'm going to do is I am going to use this skilled drag and drop. Look at that. Pow. So I move that over, and now we have all 50 million, 20 invoices. We just want to do a small test, not a big one. We don't have all day. So there we go. Now it's time that we have our PDFs. We're going to add our search service. Let me spell it right here. Azure Search, and I'm going to create that. Again, all handcrafted bits, artisanal. I'm going to call it Invoice Search, and we're going to put it in East US because we want everything to be in the same spot. Very nice. I'm going to hit Create here, and I'm going to take a sip of my lovely orange drink while it builds. Very nice. So here is the search service. Again, you're seeing me actually create them from. So if you went there and did this, it would be exactly the same. So we're going to do this thing where we import data. This is like the wizard to start. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the Azure Blob Storage thing that I just made. We'll call it test because why not? And we're going to go over to the invoice storage thing that we just made and select the container where I just uploaded those wonderful PDFs. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the intelligentsia, the intelligence. And to do that, we actually need to attach a cognitive services thing. I don't have one, so let's make one because we're all spending all sorts of, by the way, it doesn't cost very much to make these things incidentally. So let's go and let's call it Invoice Intelligence. And look how fast I type. Isn't that wonderful? We'll go to East US and we'll select the S0 pricing tier because that's all it offered me. And we're going to put it in the same resource group where we put everything else. Okay. Validating. I should have prepared some jokes for this part where it's doing things. I didn't. Apologies. So now that we refresh, notice that it's all there right now. And we can start to add the enrichments. I am just going to select everything because I'm lazy. And it's 3:15 at this point. If you're at work on a Friday after your boss told you this stuff, it's going to pull all this stuff out of the PDFs, which are not useful inherently. And notice that this is the index or the table where it's going to put all this target stuff. And there's all the intelligent things that it's going to pull out. Okay. So now it's time to create the hammer or the indexer that pulls the things out. I'm going to call it my test indexer because I have no creative bones in my body. You can do other things as well, like batch size, etc. We'll hit validating, and then it will be off to the races, I think, if I remember right. Yes. So let's go to the index. There is the index we just made, which is a table. There's the indexer that does the work, and there is the skill set that has 8 because I did select all. So we'll refresh this. There should be 20 of these when we're done. Yes, there is. Let's go to the index, and let's do a little tiny search. Plop. And this is what we get back. Not very useful. If I do say so myself. You're probably looking at this and saying, Seth, that was an interesting demo. Again, here's some stock pictures. If you'd like to send me like disgruntled programmer pictures that we can use, we can get our legal team involved. No, maybe don't send me. And you're thinking, Seth, you know, this is nice, but we were supposed to rebuild our database from this. Yes, that's right. We actually need some new skills. Remember how we had this sample skill set and I foreshadowed that we were going to make a custom one? That's right. So we're going to have to make a custom skill that does something a little bit smarter than just the default, which is okay. Remember, because we had something like this, right, which was not useful, but we want to make something like this, which is useful, right? If we can get this JSON out, then I'm pointing over here because my screen's here, but I'm going to point, where's the screen in location to me? Is it that way? Is that way? That way. Okay. Okay, the screen is that way. So thank you for, I'm getting some really good production direction here in the background. So you want this kind of JSON because it's a little bit easier to work with. But in order to do that, we're going to digress again, you know, because you know how we digress with Azure Cognitive Search. We're going to digress again and step back and talk about a special cognitive service called Form Recognizer. Form Recognizer applies advanced machine learning. This is the marketing copy. I'm going to read it like they want me to. Form Recognizer applies advanced machine learning to accurately extract text, key value pairs, and tables from documents. I'm not going to read it anymore. I'll show you what it does. So let's go here and let's actually make a new container because we have to train our new Form Recognizer. So we're going to have a container called train, like a choo-choo train, you know what I'm talking about. And what we're going to do is we're going to refresh this and upload some documents to train. And I have, in a handy way, already separated out 5. 1, 2, 3, right? You see that over there? Just 5. I'm gonna copy them over, and that's what we're gonna use to train it. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a form recognizer service. Now you're probably wondering, well, why do I have to create a new cognitive service? Well, it's because it's in preview. You can totally go do this yourself, and so that's why it's a separate one right now. So we're gonna call it the invoice reader service, and the location, as you may have guessed, is East US. And we're gonna do S0 because I need to be able to call it a lot, and then I'll hit create. Once it's done, notice, we'll give it a second. By the way, if you're looking at this and you're going to try to jot down all of these keys super fast because I show them to you, don't worry. This resource group has been deleted like right before. So there's no way you're going to be able to do it. All right, let's go to the resource here. That was loud. Sorry, it was even loud in my ears. Sorry about that. So let's go to the invoice reader here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this to build a thing. Now, here's the API console because you can call it, they're all RESTful APIs. And so what I'm going to do is instead of just using the curl command, because I always mess that up, I am going to use a special program that you may have seen. And that program is called Postman. It allows you to do posts to things. And what I'm going to do is I am going to fill in some things because we need to train the form recognizer. Let's get this key here. Don't memorize this, okay? Because then you're going to steal stuff from me. Actually, no, I deleted this a long time ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to put the endpoint in here. And the endpoint is this thing right here, right? And it's really cool. Postman is really cool because it allows you to set those things up. So let's get the endpoint. That's this thingy right here. So we'll copy that. And we're going to move it to this part right here, right there as well. Update. I'll talk about the model ID in a second. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, we want to use those 5 things we uploaded. So we need to go to the account where we actually stored the training stuff, which is TT invoice storage. So we'll do that, TT invoice storage. Then the container is obviously train because that's the container. And then the SAS value, shared access signature, is a way to share this stuff, right? And so I'm going to move it up a couple of months in the past. Again, movie magic, am I right? And I'm going to put this value in here, and that's it. So now for Form Recognizer, I'm going to say, okay, train on these 5 PDFs. All it needs is 5 PDF forms. And so there it is, and it looked at all of them, and it's like, okay, I'm done. What did it learn, you might ask? Well, that's a good question. We have to get the model ID, and what we're going to do is we're going to put it into this thingy right here so that every request now, from now on that I do, will show the actual model ID. All right, so let's do get keys. Get keys shows what keys it learned from the PDF. It learned address, city. Do you see that? So now we're starting to get some structure out of this wonderful thing, but it's time to try it out. So let's go here. Let's select a file. Let's do that. Invoice 45865. What you got? Look at this goodness. And this isn't really good to look at unless we have the actual PDF open. So let's open that sucker up, and you'll see the name, it pulled it out, the address, it pulled it out, and it gives you bounding boxes as well. What? Yes. Form recognizer. So if you have PDFs just laying around with forms in them, now you can pull all of this goodness out. And I went too fast. Notice that it also pulled out the table of things and each of the items in that table. Look at the header and the entries. Crazy, right? Mm-hmm. In version 2, it does something even smarter, but I'm not going to get ahead of myself because I wrote a blog post on it, and I can send you a link for that. All right, but notice that just because we have this gloriousness doesn't mean that Azure Cognitive Search can use it, right? Because Azure Cognitive Search, now that we've built this thing that can read forms, we need to have a way for Azure Cognitive Search to call it and get something back in its own shape. And in essence, we want to build a skill that takes in the invoice and outputs the thingies, right, in the format that we had. And we need to adhere to some simple rules. Whenever we build a skill, we want to do 3 simple things. We want to make sure that a custom skill has one job, that it can be efficient, and that it works in an imperfect world. What do I mean by that? Because this thing is going to run 140,000 times, right, over every single PDF, you got to make it fast. If it breaks, you got to make it so it's like, I broke, move on. And then you got to make sure that it only does one thing. Like, look, this is just standard programmers. So everyone knows this. If you build a function with 600 lines, something is wrong. You may be doing too much. Same with the skill, right? Effectively, what we want to build is we want to build something that has a PDF that comes in and then structured stuff that comes out. And Azure Cognitive Search understands this as, I'm going to give you something and you give me a structured thing back, okay? And we'll talk about that structure in a little bit. So how do we actually create a skill that Cognitive Search can call? Remember, we want to use that form thing, so we got to wrap it in a way that Azure Cognitive Search can use it. So let's create a skill. And to do that, we're going to make a Azure function. And I'm going to use the CLI because I'm a rebel. So we're going to do func init invoice future skill, and I'm going to use Python because I'm a triple rebel, and Python's cool. And we're going to use an HTTP trigger called analyze invoice. And you can do it all on the CLI. Look, it's all there. Wonderful. Yes, please help me out. Fantastic. Very good. So we're going to go to this init function, and again, this is the basic thing. So you could totally do this, and I'm going to change the response. I'm going to just show you how to debug this thing locally, because you can, and it's really cool. And I'm going to return here JSON.dumps status. It works, and 200 because it's A-OK. And let me show you. There you go. I'm choosing the right Conda environment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say func host start, because who loves the func? I know I do. And so now notice that this is running locally. And so we're going to pull up our handy dandy. There's the local host thing. We're going to pull up our handy dandy analyze invoice, and notice it worked. By the way, this is the input. This over here. This is the input that we're going to get, and I'll go back to that. So now what I've done is I've forward through time and actually made a function. I changed the script file to func and said to call main. This is the form recognizer key and the model ID that we're going to use. This is all in there. We got to put that in there. And while I put that in there, I'm going to take a drink here. There's my magic key. Don't memorize it. Very good. There is the endpoint. Fantastico. Although we don't need that beginning part. We'll take that off. And then the model ID. Remember that thing? That comes from, well, I have to redo this because there's a way to get all the models. There it is. It's just one. So we'll pull that out. Beautiful. And we'll put it here in the model ID because it needs those things. You saw that when I did it. Okay. The next thing is at URI. That's the endpoint where it's going to post it. Then what I do is I have to get the actual PDF file, get the response from Cognitive Services. There's the error stuff. And if everything works, I use this helper to convert that JSON that we got into something better. And so this is where the ugly code is, because I have to map stuff. And that's okay, but look how cool Python is. I can do it in a few lines of code. And so now the thing that it gets back is something that's a little bit more shapely. Let's run it again. Func host start. And now we're going to run it again locally. Notice it's going to get the storage account and the PDF and the shared access signature. We got to put that in there again. By the way, this is getting the PDFs directly from storage when it's doing this. So we'll put that in there. Wonderful. The container is going to be test, and the shared access token. Let's do another one here. Very good. Create. By the way, who doesn't wish it was 2019? All right, let's put that in there. Sorry. Oh, there you go. Look, stuff happened. Look at that. So there's all the stuff coming back from form recognizer. But here's what it looks like now. Look at that beautiful handcrafted JSON that looks just like the right. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. Even the line items are in there like the way we want it. It's glorious. And by the way, I wasn't coughing because I'm sick. Nobody worry, okay? I know everyone wakes up like with a sore throat. No, you just snore. And if you're sore in the morning, it's because you're old. That's what my wife told me. But anyways, I'm going to create a new cloud-based version of this. AZ storage account create. We need a storage account for the invoice reader skill. So we're going to go ahead and create a new function app in the cloud. Very nice. Notice how beautifully fast I type. It's wonderful. And this takes a second. And now what we're going to do is to push this app up. All we have to say is publish. And then the magic happens. It goes up there. It's like, hey, this is great. Wonderful. There's all the stuff. Great. The remote build succeeded. Everything is up there. Notice I've done a lot of stuff, command line, Visual Studio Code. You're probably also wondering about, by the way, there it is. You're going to see it. There's the reader skill and the dynamic plan. It's all in there. Wonderful. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? The function app's all in there. If I go to, there's the analyze invoice. But you remember, and the other thing is, inside of Visual Studio Code, you can actually do this as well by right-clicking. I didn't do it that way. But there's the reader skill. And if we expand that, we're going to see the actual function. There it is in the cloud. The bindings in and out. And then remember this wonderful thing, the application storage. Remember how I had these things? Well, we got to put them up there. So, pow. That's all you got to do. By the way, hit no when you do yours. I messed mine up that time. So now notice if I go to the configuration, those keys that I needed to make it work locally are now there in the cloud. Wonderful. Look at that. So we made an Azure function in Python. How's that for cool? All right, so now let's try it in the cloud version to see if we get the same thing. There is the pre-request script to set all these environment variables for me. So boop, we'll put it there. That didn't come out good. And then I'm going to put this URI in there instead. And so let's go here. But remember, we have to put this little bit in there. Fantastic. There's the body. We'll hit send and make sure that everything looks the same. Yes, it does. All right. So notice what we did is we went from scratch. We built a new Python Azure function. I showed you how to debug it and run it locally. Then I fast forwarded it in time, showed you a complete one that took the form stuff. By the way, I'm going to add application insights to this. You'll see why in a little bit. But basically, we took that function. I rewrote it so that it took the output of the form recognizer and shaped it in a way that was a lot nicer. Okay, but just because we built an Azure function that pulled information from form recognizer, which we trained, we still need to tell Azure Cognitive Search how to put all of it together. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. Fantastic. All right. So we're back here. We're going to upload our big one, the big one, all our invoices, all 50 billion of them. So, and this is why I fast forwarded this part. Because, I mean, imagine like Minecraft looking Seth looking at you while we upload these things. Be weird. Yeah. I look like this without a square head. Imagine what I look like with a square head. Amen. All right, so just like all the other things, you can call this via REST API. So let's get some keys out of here. And so we'll put the API key in there so that we can do some invoice stuff inside of Cognitive Search. Fantastic. There is the endpoint that we're going to use. Lovely. Let's put that in there. Now we want to give it an index name. Let's call it TT Invoice Index. By the way, it stands for Tailwind Traders, if you're wondering. Tailwind Traders, a fictitious company that we keep inventing. So we also want to get access to the storage so that it can work on the stuff in there. So we'll put that wonderful thing in there. And then the cognitive services key that it needs, we'll get that over here. Man, you're getting all my keys today. If I find any people at my house, I'll use my pepper spray. Next thing I need to do is buy some pepper spray. All right, I forgot to actually reset these so that everyone can have everyone out. So let's create the index. Notice to do that, there is this body that we have to do. And you're probably wondering, well, that's really long. But it's just basically a way of defining the index, which is the database or the table where we store these things. There it is. Let's look at it inside of the actual portal so you can get a sense for what it looks like. So there is the index. Remember, we have our old one there, and now we have our new one, which is wonderful. Let's go to the fields here, and you're going to see that there is this new invoice field that's a complex type. Yes, we are making a structure to map the output of our skill so that we're going to get this beautiful handcrafted artisanal structure. Wonderful. Step number 2. We're going to create the skill set, and this skill set is going to have a skill of 1 because we only want one skill, the reader skill. You can map others to it if you want, but it's this thing right here. Right? You can do a bunch of skills, by the way. I'm just going to do one for this demo. So there is where we get this URI. You just saw where I went. And then this is what we're giving it, and this is what we want out. We want the storage path and the shared access token and the invoice is going to be the output. And so there you go. Now it's like, I just learned a skill. I should have called it Neo. Yeah, because I just had to do that. There's the skill set with a skill of 1. Step number 3, for those that are international, we have to create a data source. And the data source is going to pull from the containers blob, right? I threw some international stuff in there, by the way. Do you want me to? I can do the rest in Spanish. Maybe. No, let's not do that. By the way, I just made it. And there you go. There is the data source. Pow. Wonderful. And then finally, the indexer, which is the workhorse. This uses all 3 of those things to create the conveyor belt to do that. And notice that the output mapping is going to be invoice, which is that complex type. Wonderful. So I hit send, and it's like I just learned how to do all this amazing stuff. And so if I go to this index, you'll see that it's working. Here's the cool thing. This reader skill is getting called. How do I know? because I did the application setting, and I'm bobbing my head because you'll see in a second that it's literally calling it. Bam, bam. Okay, now there you go. I woke up. You see that? Cognitive Search is now getting to work on your 140,000 PDFs. Pow, pow, pow. Isn't that wonderful? You're probably wondering, well, what is it actually doing? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Let's go ahead and zoom into one of these things. Remember that output that I had? That's what for each one of them. Pow, pow. It's going to do the work. It's going to start converting things into JSON, into a structured JSON, which is absolutely amazing. Now let's go back into the invoice search. Let's see if it's done some work. Let's go to the indexer. There it is. It's work. 720 documents done already. Let's go to this thing right here, and let's do a search. Star. Kapow! Look at this beautiful footage. It literally sucked out the exact structure of your PDF and put it into the search index. Watch, we can do some crazy searches. Like what, you may ask? How about if we want to count? What? See, it should be going up. There, 840. What if we want something else, like the company is in Australia? Well, because I made this special index, you can totally do that. What if I wanted to do another search like this one? We wanted to get, let's get all the PDFs or invoices that have an item ID of 41. You can totally do that. But wait, there's more. This is like a ShamWow commercial. Buy a ShamWow now, 2 for the price of 1. Shipping is free. Look at that. I can do almost anything that I could do to search for this index because it's all in there, right? And everything is in there, which is really cool. Okay. So very nice. You're probably wondering, let's get to this because I'm running out of time here. We saw this process here that we did. We got the source data for our Tailwind Traders PDFs. We cracked the document open. We used the skill set from Form Recognizer to enrich the document and put it into the search index. But wait, you may say to me, but Seth, I wanted it in a table. Remember, that's what you promised. Well, you can do that. There's something called projections into what's called a knowledge store. And these projections can be tabular style data that you can use later to do whatever. And because I was sneaky, let me go back here to my skill set. I was sneaky and didn't tell you that I added a secret skill on the sly that creates 4 tables. One for invoice, company, people, and line items. And that is one of the skills in the skill set. So where does it put that, you may ask? Well, I'm so glad you asked. It puts it into table storage in this case. And notice we have an actual database of people, company, invoices, and line items. So we effectively restored it. Now, it might not be in your Squeal database, as your boss so intelligently put it, but we have it in a shape with the relationships because you notice it has a partition key and a line item ref, and it has the relationships built in. You can actually map this back into whatever shape of thing you want. You can do crazy things like create. This is a hideous. Amy, how come you never, by the way, Amy's in the call and she's secretly watching this. How come you never told me this dashboard's so hideous? By the way, for those that are watching and are statisticians, notice that I generated these PDFs by hand. How do you know? You may ask. Wow. Let's see if someone can answer that, if anyone's watching. To summarize, because I've got 1 minute, ingest, enrich, explore is the pattern. We used Form Recognizer and Azure Functions in the enrich portion. And then we did some exploration, and we also projected, did a little Power BI goodness. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to Docs here, which is really good. And there are some resources available here. These are where all of these things are stored. And so if you want to get this repo, you totally can and build this yourself. Absolutely, it would be fantastic. So I think I'm done. And that was 45 minutes, almost to the dot.
Wow, that's amazing that you actually made it in time, like at the exact moment. That's pretty awesome.
My mama did not raise a shirker.
And we really enjoyed it. It was an awesome talk, and thank you a lot for it. I forgot to mention in the beginning, but I say it again right now, that if you have any questions about the session, you can ask it on chat.globalai.community. And there you can also find some links that Amy just shared for you, so you can get started with all the stuff we just seen from Seth. And so thank you a lot. I actually don't have any outstanding questions yet from the attendees, so I'm just going to, yeah, I have something. If I have if I want to manually send data to the search index from my app, can I do that?
So what I would do is I would manually send the data to the storage. Like, for example, remember how I uploaded it all into invoices? You can send your file to the invoices directory or container. And what happens is the indexer wakes up every certain amount of time, and it knows which documents it's already seen. And so if there's a new document, it will just index that continually and just does that forever if that's what you set it to do.
Mm-hmm. And I was also interested in a lot of tech behind this, and to see more. But I also wait for your blog entry about the version 2, because that will be even cooler, I can imagine.
Yeah, let me see if I can bring it up here. SethJuarez.com. I basically, you can see right here, there it is. By the way, I rebuilt it just in case people had questions, so I can show you how it actually works. But here it is, making use of form recognizer, and you can see that I go through and show you. It's a kind of a tiny little bit different, not much, but it's more succinct. Like, you can send, when you send the request to train, it goes and trains, and then you can ask how it's doing, right? There's also a way now in Forms Recognizer version 2 to actually label your stuff. So notice I did an unsupervised approach where I just gave it stuff and it figured it out. But if you want to, like, if it doesn't get it right, you can actually label it a little bit so it can get it a little bit more right. And so you can find this here, by the way. It's all in here. Great question.
Mm-hmm. So in the end, we can maybe use it for more than invoices.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Every kind of forms and basically every kind of documents from that point.
Yeah, and in this case, I only showed PDFs, but remember, Azure Cognitive Search works with PowerPoints, works with Word, works with whatever.
And what languages are supported? There is someone who is very interested whether Arabic documents are supported.
That's a great question. It turns out that if Cognitive Search, I think our text analyzers and cognitive services may have Arabic. I am not sure. But here's the thing. Notice that because we were able to create our own skill set, you can actually attach any functionality to the indexer thing as it goes. So you can do anything you want. Now, I'd have to look at cognitive services to see if it has support for Arabic. I'm not sure, but so the answer is I don't know. But even if it doesn't, if you have something that can pull stuff out of documents, like a picture or what, like pictures will always work because pictures are kind of universal, but text analyzers would also work if you have one, and you could build your own custom skill to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Great question.
Yes, I think so. And it was very interesting to see that. Okay, so that is because Arabic, it's not really, this easy to read language, because I was just wondering that it's obvious, or it's probably then working maybe on, maybe in Danish or in some other languages then.
When it comes to these things like Arabic is actually a beautiful language. I had a guy from Senegal teach me, his name is Tuku, teach me how to read Arabic, and they would just laugh at my pronunciation. It was hilarious. And so it's not hard to read. I mean, the characters are very specific, and it turns out that the accent marks are the vowels, and sometimes they leave those out if people know it a little bit more. And so it's not a question of harder or not. It's a question of if Cognitive Services supports it. And I want to look it up here. Let me see. Cognitive Services. So we're looking at language support here. Natural language. There's a here, I'll bring this up so you can see it. So here's all the language support that we have in here. So let's see, text. Let's do text analytics for one.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the ones that we have for language detection. These are the other ones, Arabic. So we can do named entity recognition in Arabic. But I don't know about sentiment or other stuff, but it should be able to. This is just the intelligence services, but it will pull the text out of your documents as is, right? Because for us, these are literally just symbols, right? Like an A is the same thing as an aleph, which is Hebrew, or for example, a umlaut over an A, right, is a different character, and so
Yep.
yeah, it just pulls the characters out.
Okay, and so I also wanted to hear a bit about, I know it's not technical at all, but I also wanted to talk a bit about the pricing part.
Yes. So let's take a look at it here. Let me move my thing. Azure Cognitive Search. So you can find all of the stuff about Azure Cognitive Search here. And pricing would be right here, right? We have a free, right? And this is super awesome if you want to just try it out, see if it works. There's a free version, there's a basic version, and then there's standard workloads, which get to be much bigger in terms of the stuff that it can support. And so you can totally find out how much it costs right here.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like if the basic one is about 2 gigabytes of storage, 15 indexes, up to 3 units of scale, document cracking, and image extraction, it's about $73 a month.
Yes, cool. Thanks, Seth. I would like to have a very quick last question.
Sure.
So what if we have the same documents but handwritten, so in Arabic, and so can the form recognizer recognize it?
Yes, form recognizer does indeed work with images. We use OCR as well to pull the text out. So you should be able to do that. And let me bring that up here. Form recognizer Azure. Here, my Google foo is strong. You can see that you can do. It pulls everything out. There's customer. I got to find the. Notice that you can play with this. For example, these are the key value pairs out of this. Notice that this is a picture of a text document. This clearly is a picture, right? You see that right there. That's clearly a picture. And so it does indeed work with pictures and even stuff like this. Look at that goodness. By the way, here's the JSON that comes out of it.
Yes.
So you can totally go and play with that. You can't upload things because you have to train the model first, but you can totally see what it looks like here. And you can use the free version. It's in preview, and so there's a free tier of form recognizer that you can use as well.
Thank you a lot, Seth. I think I'll have to wrap it up because we need some time for our next speaker who is already waiting for me. So thank you a lot again for this awesome session and for all the information you gave us. It was very valuable. And thank you again. And I hope everyone enjoyed it a lot, just like me. So thank you again.
See you next time.
Yes, see you next time.
Hey, my name